Life by design. Steve did mention this about life by design. We've talked about this so many times about designing your own life. And I always say that if you don't design your own life, then you'll end up with a box standard life. Now, what is a box standard life? Box standard life is what everybody else gets. You know, the same number of problems, the same number of complaints, the same that goes on out there. You're inviting it into life, and that sounds very, very, very cheesy of me to say that, but that's the truth. Basically, if you want to design your own life, then you just get what everybody gets, and that is not what we want. And the whole point of following a program, the whole point of setting goals is because you're trying to carve your own path, if you like, to have your own roadmap of how you want things to unfold in your life, and that's what we intend to do come the end of this presentation. Now, I'm going to be sharing with you 8 steps in trying to create a roadmap for yourself. And there are 2 ways you can go about doing this. Number 1, you can either look at these steps as isolated, as things, as tools that you can use in an isolated fashion. Like, say, step number 4 really resonates well with you. You can look at it and say, like, oh, this is a really good thing. I can do this, okay? And take that and implement that in your life. That's one way of doing it. Another way is to look at all these steps from step 1 all the way to step 8 as a tool in itself, and therefore adopt the whole thing and say, like, right, okay, that flows really well. If I do that for a particular thing or for a particular goal, then that will work well for me. You understand? So you can also do that as well. But there is also something else you can do. You can also adopt these same 8 steps holistically for your whole life. Right? Now, rather than looking at things individually, rather than looking at each step individually, rather than looking at a goal individually, you look at your whole life holistically and apply all these steps in order to kind of organize your life. And that's now the third one is what I recommend, because I think it's very important to achieve a life balance. One of the problems that we have is not quite striking the right balance in life. We can be very successful in one area of life and be very poor in another area of life. How many times have we heard of really successful business people, or really successful entrepreneurs, or really successful celebrities, or sports personalities that have really failed when it comes to relationships, for instance, or when it comes to finance, you know, or when it comes to health, you know. So, and that's because somehow they didn't quite strike the balance. They had engaged and invested so much of their energy and their time and their expertise and everything into whatever it is that they wanted to do, and they became really successful at it, but they did that at the expense of everything else. So it's important to have a holistic view of your life, because if you do that, then your life will be more meaningful. You'll have the opportunity to enjoy your success, because then everything is in balance. Your relationships are in balance, your finances are in balance, your career is in balance, you know, everything, your mind, your mentality, your mindset, everything is in balance. So it's very important to look at it holistically. So like I said, we have 8 steps, and step 1 is all about commitment. Now, real transformation will not come unless you learn to take yourself very seriously. When we were talking about, I think a couple of programs ago, a couple of months ago, last year, I think we were talking about target-driven living. And I did talk about this. One of the most important things is to take yourself seriously. And I think this is one of the things that we don't quite do very well. We're more likely to take our employers very seriously. We're more likely to take our friends very seriously. We're more likely to take other people very seriously, to take the government very seriously, and everything else for that matter, to take the news very seriously. But we don't quite take ourselves very seriously. What do I mean? How many times have we wanted to do something? We said, like, right, this is what I want to do, and then we failed to do it. Or how many times have we promised ourselves that this is what I'm going to do from now on, and we haven't done it? It's all because we're not taking ourselves very seriously. We're not taking our own initiatives very seriously. We're not taking our own plans very seriously. So it all starts with that commitment. What commitment do you make with yourself? What commitment do you make with your partner? That's also very important, because I think I think in this journey, when you're trying to improve yourself, when you're trying to set yourself a roadmap, it's very important to have a traveling partner. You know, someone who you can always sort of confide in, someone who will always hold you to account, someone you can say, right, this is my commitment, this is what I want to do. Someone who can hold you to account when you don't actually do what you said you would do. So commitment is the very first step. Step number 2, year in review. Now, year for so many people and in so many different levels, year 2020 is a year to forget for a lot of people. But trust me, don't forget it, okay? And if you are thinking of forgetting year 2020, don't. Because probably of all the years, it's probably the year that you'll probably learn the most about yourself and about life in general than any other year you've ever had. Why? Because it was the year that was different to all the other years. I always say that the time of crisis is always the time to take stock. So many times when things go wrong, we look at it as an excuse. This is what is happening at the moment, and I hope you might identify with this. So many things have gone wrong in the past year, and rightly so. It's mostly to do with COVID-19 and whatever things happened as a result. The lockdowns, people not being well, people losing their jobs, finances being ruined, and this, that, and the other. And it's true that has happened. But as a result, what's happening now, it's very easy for one's mind to use that as justification for everything, and not just justification. Would everyone please mute yourself if you're...
Oh, why have I not?
Right, okay, let me continue. Right, so yeah, so basically, where was I? Here, not on gratitude, before that. So yeah, so 2020, so much has gone wrong, but it's very easy to kind of encapsulate all that in one box and say, oh, it's all because of COVID-19, you know, and as a result, you don't get to learn anything from it. But I always say, if at any time of crisis is the time to take stock. And why is that so? It's because usually during time of crisis, that's when problems get magnified out of proportion. It is usually times of crisis where problems that were already there appear greater than they normally would. Crisis doesn't necessarily create new problems. It just magnifies the problems that were already there. For instance, let me give you an example. For instance, when they're saying that, oh, COVID-19 has affected the Black and ethnic minorities more than other communities, does that mean it's a new thing? Does it mean it's a problem caused by COVID-19? That somehow COVID-19 started going around picking out the Blacks and the ethnic minorities? No, but it's just that the crisis has almost like highlighted an underlying problem that was there to start with. You understand? Whether that was the issue of inequality in terms of healthcare, in terms of accessibility of services, whether that is to do with socioeconomic status, whether that is to do with employment landscape, that probably have more of the ethnic minorities in areas where they become more at risk. So basically, the crisis has kind of highlighted a situation that was already there and has just brought it into light. So it's very important to and even more so for the year 2020 to be put into review and for you to look back and say, right, I've had this situation, I've had that situation, I've had this problem. Now, why did I get myself in this situation? Why did I end up in this situation? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? What can I do better? So it's very important to not to forget year 2020, but to actually put it into review and try and learn something from it. Right. So what are we talking about here in year in review? You're talking about the greatest events. What really stood out for you in that year? your greatest accomplishments. What did you accomplish? The greatest lessons, the things you learned from it, your own improvements. What have you improved? Um, if there is things that you've improved, then point them out. What is it that you were not so good at the start of last year, and come the end of the year, you've really improved? The greatest influences, people that have really influenced you positively and negatively. It's very important to reflect on that. The smart decisions you've made over the year, the most caring service you've done over the year, the biggest risks taken, the most important relationships improved. What should you have done differently? That is very important to assess that, right, this has happened. What could I have done differently to get a different outcome? Things that you need to do more or less this year based on what you did last year, and things that you might need to stop altogether. So year review is very important, and I think that is a very important step to do. Before you can start planning for this year, it's very important to do the one before, because it kind of paints a picture of where you are. And therefore, you know what your next step should be, rather than you just, sometimes the mistake we make is we come into a new year, we make these resolutions and plans without really seeing what made us fail the year before. So review is very important, because that will help you adjust how you move forward. Now, the next step is gratitude. Now, gratitude is really important. A lot of people confuse gratitude and happiness. And sometimes people wait to feel happy before they can be grateful. And personally, I think that's a mistake. I think it should be the other way around. I think you need to be grateful first to be truly happy. And gratitude basically is just the attitude of mind where you learn to appreciate everything you have in your life. And it's usually the little things that go unnoticed. I always say that human beings, being survival creatures, we are more adept to danger than pleasure. What do I mean by that? We are more sensitive to the dangers of life, to the things, when things go wrong, when you get threatened, when things are not quite right, when someone is upsetting you, anything that is negative, we tend to be more sensitive to that. We tend to be more adept, to be more, not in tune necessarily, but we're more sensitive to those things than to the nicer things. And therefore, it is very easy for things to be happening in your life, really good things, things that could really motivate you, to go unnoticed, because naturally as humans, because we are creatures of survival, we tend not to focus on those things. So it's very important to develop this culture of gratitude where you actively look for those things, because if you don't do that, all of them will go unnoticed. So things like 3 most amazing people in your life, you need to actually literally think about those people and write them down. That it could be your friends, it could be your family, it could be your spouse, it could be your children. 3 great things about my home. Do you appreciate your home? What is it that you like about your home? Is it you sitting in your lounge watching TV? Is it you going to bed? Maybe you like your bedroom. Maybe it's you doing your gardening. What do you like about your home? It's very important to kind of actively focus on those things. 3 great things about the place of work and what you do for a living. So many times when people talk about their work, it's in the context of them complaining about their managers, complaining about the salary, complaining about this, that, and the other. But this is the time for you to look at it in the positive sense. This is where I work. What's so good about this place? Maybe it's your work colleagues, maybe it's your manager, maybe it's your salary, maybe you think they're paying you very well, maybe it's what you learn from them. It's time to kind of be grateful for that as well, and focus on what's positive about it. 3 gifts, talents, and skills I have been given. That's something else you can focus on. That's you looking within and saying, like, right, this is what I can do really well. What else can I do really well? What am I good at? What is it that people say I'm good at? What are the things that when I do, I feel so comfortable and so enriched when I do it. So it's very important to focus on those things, and that is how you develop the culture of gratitude. Areas of knowledge and experience developed. 3 lack experiences in your life. Luck is also very important. Luck is part of life. We all come across this area where things happened and you were not expecting them. Things happen when you're least expecting them. It's very easy to just take them for granted and forget about them. This is the time for you to actually take stock of them and think hard And sometimes, you know, when you're thinking of these things, it might feel like I can't come up with anything else. You know, I can't come up with anything. But it takes time. Take time to really focus on these positive things. And once they start flowing, my God, I'm telling you, they will flow. So write them all down and you'll start developing that culture of gratitude. Step number 4, life assessment. Now, this is where things start getting groovy. This is when things become interesting. I love Jim Rohn. He says success is a numbers game. And Steve is smiling there because he's a great fan of Jim Rohn as well. Success is a numbers game. And at the end of the day, it comes down to numbers. And when you reduce things to numbers, it becomes very easy to tell whether you've done well in life or you've messed up. And so when we talk of life assessment, we're talking about reducing your life to numbers in a nutshell. That's what you do. And the program that Steve was talking about, and that I'll kind of more in depth share it more later on in this presentation, is a big chunk of it is in doing that, is reducing your life, not just having these goals written up, but almost like breaking that down and reducing it into numbers that you can easily assess on a daily basis and see that number increasing or decreasing. You know what I mean? If you can reduce your health and your fitness to a number, right? And be able to track that number, it's easy for you to tell whether you're improving or not. For instance, if you're using your weight, for instance, to track your health, I mean, trust me, weight is not the only thing you can use, but if that's what you're doing, then that's the number. And therefore, if you're trying to say that you're trying to cut down weight and you were 100 pounds and now you're 120, would you say you've been successful? No, you've not, because the number says otherwise, you know. And therefore, sometimes reducing your assessment to numbers can really, really help to make your assessment realistic, to make your targets more achievable and more obvious, if you like. So how do you go about doing that? Now, we understand that life has many different aspects, and we've broken it down into 8 aspects: relationship, family, physical, mental, business, finance, spiritual, and lifestyle. Everything kind of falls within one of these areas, and we call it the circle of life, or the wheel of life. So anything you will ever get involved in your life will fall into one of these categories. It's either in the area of relationship, in the area of family, physical, your health, mental, you know, your mindset and your mental well-being, your business, which means how you make your money. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean you being an entrepreneur and starting your own business. I think we've covered this before. It just means how you make your money. So if you're employed, then that's your business. Finance, which in a nutshell means how you manage your money, the money that you've already made. How do you manage it? So that talks about things about investment, savings, you know, credit, debts, those kind of things, and so on and so on. Spiritual, and that cuts across whether you consider yourself a spiritual person or not. As humans, we do have that aspect in our life, and what in one way or another, it will affect you. It will affect your life, and if you don't take into account that area of your life and find a way to enrich it, then it will eventually come back and bite you at the rear end at some point. So that's also some area to really look into. Lifestyle is also very important. What's your lifestyle? How do you spend your time? How do you spend time with your family? Do you get time to rest? Do you get time to recreate for recreation activities? Do you enrich yourself with you know, do you change your environment? Do you change your setting? What do you enjoy doing? Are you involved in any sports? You know, that kind of thing is also very important. So basically all these areas are the areas that you really need to focus on. And when you're talking about you looking at your life holistically, it means looking at all these areas and seeing how you can improve in these areas. And when you're doing your life assessment, is looking at all these areas and seeing which areas are lagging behind and how you can actually improve one area or the next. Now, there is this interesting structure here, and you'll see this more in the actual program that we actually we're actually following. Where basically you look at all these different areas. For instance, let me give you an example. For instance, in the physical area, you ask yourself a set of questions, okay? And you score yourself between 1 and 5, for instance, and 1 being not true at all. Basically, these are statements about yourself. So 1 being, this doesn't apply to you, not true at all, and 5 being perfect, that is definitely me. This is me through and through. So you ask yourself a set of questions. You ask yourself, say, 10 questions, for instance, in the area of physical. I'll give you an example. For instance, questions might be something like, I do strength training at least 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Question like that. So your response would be, not very consistently. I kind of do exercises, but not that consistently. So I'll probably give myself a 2 on that one. You understand what I mean, right? Or, yeah, definitely. I actually do it 5 times a week. So you give yourself a 5 for that, you know. Or another question, I do cardiovascular exercises 3 times a week. You know, things like running, anything that will raise your heart rate, running, jogging, this, that, and the other, or a different sport. And you give yourself a number. Or I'll give you another one. Well, this is a good one. I have undisturbed sleep for at least 8 hours each night, for instance, because 8 hours is the standard for a healthy person. You need 8 hours each night to really be at your, what's the word? To be at your peak performance when you wake up. Okay. Other people might say, 6 hours is enough, but you know, health-wise, 8 hours is the gold standard. So we are trying to measure ourselves against that gold standard. So the question is, do I have 8 hours undisturbed sleep every single night? Chances are maybe not. But how would I fare? More often than not, I do. Sometimes, no, maybe I have 4 hours and then I wake up and then I have another 4 hours. Maybe that's my routine. So you gauge yourself between 1 and 5, the same thing. So you have a set of questions and you answer those questions, and therefore, the highest point you can have in that would be 50 if you scored 5 out of all the 10 questions, or you could get 10 if you scored yourself 1 in all the 10 questions. And then after doing that, for each of these areas now, that I just gave you an example of the physical. So you do that the same for all the areas: physical, financial, business, lifestyle, spiritual, family, relationship. And then you plot that on this fancy looking chart right here. Now, I have questions for all these different areas, and I have 10 questions for each of that. And that all comes up into that program. And you can do that, and you can plot yourself. And I remember the first time I plotted mine, and that was 2 years ago. It was very interesting that my chart was very skewed. Let me show you how it looked like. Hang on a second. Let me come out of this one. Bear with me 1 second. Let me show you how my chart looked like. I'm going to share a whiteboard with you and draw roughly how my wheel of life looked like 2 years ago. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Right now, it's just a rough representation. Now, if this is my wheel of life, it looked something like this. Right? Now, what you might ask, so what does that mean? What's wrong with that? For one, that really doesn't look like a wheel, does it? Because a wheel should be round, isn't it? So for one, it doesn't look like a wheel at all. Because the idea of this, ideally, this should have been something like that. Which means I'm kind of having high scores, consistently high scores on almost every single one of them. Does that make sense? Ideally, if I scored 50 points for each one of them, then my wheel of life would be a perfect cycle, huge, round, and very evenly distributed, something like that. But mine looked something like that. almost scoring 100% on this one, very poor on that one, about halfway on that one, quite poor on that one, and so on and so on. Now, what does this tell me? This tells me very, very vividly and very visually that my life is very unbalanced. It tells me that there are certain areas of my life that I've done quite well, but there are certain other areas that I've not done well at all, and therefore I should invest more this year in trying and improving those areas. Does that make sense? So the importance of the wheel of life is to kind of show you very vividly and very visually what areas of your life needs to improve more. And therefore you can start making strategies and plans on how to start improving those areas. All right, I'll stop share that and go back to the presentation. Right, where was I? Here we go. Back to full screen. It's taking its time today. Oh, here we are. Right, so that's where we are. Next. Right, step 5, it's about the grand design. Now the grand design, basically this is where you put things down. Now that you've made yourself a commitment, you've done your year review before, you've seen where you messed up, you've gone through that, you've gone to step 3. What was step 3 again? You've developed the art of gratitude. You look at the things that are really important in your life, your family, your home, your place of work, and lots of other things. You've finished that. You've come to the 4th area, where is your life assessment. You've assessed your life. You've seen where it is skewed. You've seen how imbalanced your life is and areas that you think needs improvement. The next stage now is you setting up your goals now, the grand design. What do you want to see changing for this year? What areas do you want to see improving? And in this area, you can be as comprehensive as possible. I mean, I've heard people saying, oh, you know, you can't have many goals, or the problem is that people set too many goals. You can't have too many goals, you just need 1 or 2 goals and that's enough. But the truth of life is, in the whole year, you can achieve so much. You can do so many things. Why do you want to limit yourself to 1 or 2 things? Why don't you go for the full mark? Why don't you go for everything? You know what I mean? And the reason I'm saying this is because life doesn't wait for you. I mean, it's like if you're focusing on one thing, other things are not waiting for you. They will still be there. They will still be messing you up. If your relationship is messed up and you're focused on your finances, your relationship is not going to go on pause while you're dealing with your finances. Your relationship is still struggling just as much. So when you're thinking of grand design, you have to look at all these things holistically and almost like make a plan to improve every area that needs improvement. Because really, if you have it set up like that in a program, you're not going to be overwhelmed. The reason people get overwhelmed is not because they have too many goals. It is because they haven't set out a roadmap on how they want to achieve those goals. Do you remember there was one time I said, it was on a different presentation, I think it was the same to do with target-driven living, that you wake up in the morning, you feel so overwhelmed, you feel like you have so much that you need to do, and you go through that day, you come at the end of the day, and you do a lot, you struggle, you do a lot, but you come at the end of the day, and you still feel like a failure, you feel like you haven't achieved anything, because really, when you woke up in the morning, the things that you were feeling yourself overwhelmed with, realistically, you couldn't have done it in one day, but because you did not break that down into chunks that you could complete in a day, at the end of the day, you still feel like a failure because you actually haven't completed that task, you understand? And therefore, the problem is not that the task was so big, it's just because you didn't design it in a way that you have something to complete in a day. Because if you wake up in the morning and you know exactly what you need to do in that particular day, you can do that and come at the end of the day and say, right, I set out this morning to do this and I've done it, and therefore I'm successful. You understand? I'll give you a simple example. You're trying to read a book, okay? You're not going to read a 600-page book in one day. But if you say, like, today I'm just going to read 1 chapter, and you manage to read that 1 chapter, at the end of that day, you will feel so good about yourself because you've completed what you set yourself out to do. But if you didn't do that, and you just woke up in the morning and said, oh my goodness, I need to read that book, and that day passes and you haven't read a page, and you wake up the following morning and say, oh my goodness, I need to read that book, and then you read one chapter, at the end of the day, you still feel like, I still haven't completed this book. I should have completed it. But you're never going to complete it one day. So all I'm saying about the grand design is about you setting out a roadmap on how you're going to achieve these things step by step and breaking it down in a way that you can do it on a daily basis. So this is about you picking up what you would like to accomplish this year. Is you answering the question for all the categories of life. So in all the areas, like I said before, you have to do this holistically. And remember, when you're doing this, don't filter yourself. A mistake that a lot of people do is when they're coming to the state of grand design, they start challenging themselves. It's like, I don't think I can do that. And they start looking at the challenges. Oh, but there is this problem. Oh, but my employment, my salary, I can't afford that. I can't do this. I can't do that. This is not the time for that. There is a time for that later on in the program. But at this stage, basically, it's all about what changes you want to make. And these are the changes you want to make based on the outcome of your wheel of life and the areas that you think that you need to improve. So don't filter yourself. Go for it. That if it's about you improving your relationship, then go for it. What things do you want to change? What things do you want to do? What do you want to see happening in your life? It might be something as simple as, I want to make sure that I'm starting to have date nights with my spouse, for instance, or I want to start going out with my family once every month, for instance. You know what I mean? Stop questioning yourself like, oh, but now there's a lockdown, so that's not going to happen. It's not time for that now. Just set yourself up for the things you really want to see happening in your life. Put them down. You'll have time to assess how you can go about doing them later on in the program. And same in about grand design. Once you've put them all down, the next thing to do is you have to narrow them down into 10 goals. Now, you'll come to understand the importance of these 10 goals later on. Because you might have written down 100 different things you want to do. Now, narrow them down to 10 and try to make sure out of the 8, you remember the 8 aspects of life I mentioned before, the physical, the financial, the business, all those areas. Try and ensure at least you have at least one goal for each of those areas. Some of them you might have 2, some of them you might have 1, but at least have 1 of each. But in total, you can have 10. And the aim of that is to again, approach this thing holistically and make sure that throughout this year, you're trying to improve in every aspect of your life. And once you do that, you can start focusing on those 10 goals for the remainder of the year. Right. Step 6, we're almost there, guys. The X factor. Now, Jim Rohn, again, the guy we love so much, he says, success is something you attract by the person you become. So many times when we talk of success, we think outwardly. We think about everything else. We think about the economy. We think about your employer and what they're not doing for you. You're thinking about the weather and how bad it's been and it's messed you up so much. You're thinking about everything else but yourself. Now, step number 6 is all about yourself. And truly, true success will come if you improve. Everything becomes easier when you get better. Jim Rohn says that again. So success is something you attract by the person you become. So it's also important in this year, and that's very important when it comes to personal development, to focus on how you can improve yourself, how you can improve your own output, how you can improve your own outlook, how you can improve your own efficiency in different areas. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about for each of the goals you have. You remember we had those 10 goals that you narrowed down to. You ask yourself questions like, who do I need to become to fulfill those goals? For instance, it might be something like, I want to spend more time with my children, for instance. That could be the question. So the question is, why am I not spending time with my children? Definitely there are things that I need to change in my life first to be able to spend more time with my children. And therefore, you have to think, who do I need to become to be able to do that? It might be you cutting down on the number of hours that you work. You go to work and you might need to rearrange your work schedule. You might need to rearrange your other schedule, whatever, maybe your sleeping pattern. You might need to start waking up a bit earlier to get your work done earlier so that you have time to spend with your children after they come back from school. It might be something else. So it's the question of you asking yourself, who do you need to become? What new habits you need to have? What new disciplines you need to have? What new behaviors you need to start? It might be things about existing healthy habits that you need to expand, the things that you need to do. If it's exercising, you need to expand on that. It might be your diet. What poor habits do you need to stop? And what implementation and routine do you need to start? And by this, we'll see it more in the next step. It's what you need to be doing on a daily basis. It's very important because we are creatures of habit, and what we do daily defines who we are. And therefore, when you're talking about the X factor, you're talking about you and how you can improve yourself. It has to be in your routine, what you do on a daily basis. So in step 6, this is where you answer these sort of questions. Step number 7 is about the plan of action. You need to have a plan of action. And in your plan of action, it's things like, for each of the goals, again, all the 10 goals that you had, you have to break them down into the workable chunks. Now, this is where you go smart, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. This is where you look at those goals and say, right, this is what I want to achieve this year. Under the circumstances, how am I going to achieve this? Okay, right. So I need to increase my income. So, right, under the circumstances, what do I need to do to increase my income? What can I do to increase my income? Do I need to work more hours? Do I need to look for another job that pays more? Do I need maybe to go for training? Do I need to train myself better to have more qualifications? What do I need to do now and this year to get myself closer to that goal of earning more, and so on and so on? Again, you need to describe who is going to be impacted by that goal and how they're going to be impacted, positively and negatively. Now, this is very important because this answers the question of why you're doing what you're doing. It's one of the reasons why most goals are not fulfilled, because so many times we set goals without really looking at the impact of the goal we have set. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? For instance, I'm thinking about getting a second job because I want more income. My goal is to have more income. Now, in the question of impact, here comes things like, if I get a second job, it means I'm going to have less time with my family. How is my family going to be impacted by this? Are they going to be impacted positively or negatively? Am I ready to absorb that impact? How do I compensate for that impact? It's very important to answer these questions at the very beginning. Why? Because if you don't do that at the outset, what's going to happen is you set yourself out, I'm going to get myself a second job, you get very excited, oh, I'm going to earn a lot this time. And then as a result, you end up creating a different problem that you did not foresee at the beginning, and that pulls you back. And then whatever you call yourself success becomes a failure because you realize you've attained what you wanted to attain, but you're not enjoying it. You're not getting the pleasure out of it because you did not foresee the impact of the changes you're making in your life. So that is really, really important, whether positive or negative. Do you need any assistance? That is very important. Do you need any mentors? Do you need coaches? It is very important to set it from the beginning, the people you need to help you along the journey. Over the past 2 years, since I started using this program, I've pinpointed and chosen, handpicked literally, people that I wanted to associate myself with, people that I wanted to work with, people that I wanted to learn from. And I have made the deliberate effort to link up with those people, to relate to those people, to add value to those people's lives, because I know that those people can be my mentors. Those people can help train me. Those people can help inspire me to be better at the things that I want to do. So it's very important to do that at the outset. And over the last 2 years, I've developed some 4 or 5 really serious, enriching relationships with people that I consider as mentors to me personally, because I actively sought them out and I actively invested in them, because first you have to add value to them for them to add value to you. I did that, and at the moment I'm reaping the rewards of actually having that relationship. So that's also very important. You need to seek that assistance at the beginning and really go for it. Research, very important. You need to find out what you require. Resources, obviously you can't start building a house without really counting your chickens first. Training, self-development, and very importantly, setting deadlines. You have to set deadlines. There are things For instance, you might do at the beginning of the year and say like, right, I'm giving myself 1 month to get this done. Or I'm giving myself 6 months to get this done. Or others might be ongoing. I say, I'm giving myself till the end of the year, but I'll keep tracking it and assessing it as I go. So deadlines are very important. And finally, taking action. Taking action. Now, faith without works is dead. I mean, we might sit here and talk about these things again and again. It's like what I said at the very beginning about setting goals. Sometimes we just set goals and then just leave them there and nothing happens, you know. But it's at the end of the day, it's all about taking actions. It's all about what am I going to do now? What am I going to do tomorrow? And the most important thing is when you're setting yourselves, you're setting your roadmap, when you're setting goals, when you're setting your plan of action for the year, it's very important to determine what you're going to do in the next 24 hours. What you're going to do in regards to your goals, in regards to what you're doing. What am I going to do today? Before I sleep today, what am I going to do? Tomorrow, what am I going to do? Next week, what am I going to do? In the next 30 days, what am I going to do? Because if you don't do that, believe you me, you will have done all the works, you will have done all the 7 steps, you will leave them there, and you will remember them on the New Year's Eve of 2022. And you'll start all over again and you've accomplished nothing. But if you start acting now, instantly, then that becomes the ladder of change and ladder of success there and then. So there you have it. Those are the 8 steps, in my opinion, of setting the roadmap for your success this year. Now, very quickly, I'll go through this rolling assessment program, which basically highlights the program itself and how it works out, basically, and how you can track your progress on a continuous basis. Because like I said before, it all comes down to routine. If what you're doing is not routine based, then it's not going to be very effective, because we are inherently creatures of habit. Now, basically, the program itself is broken down into let me go back, into weekly, monthly, and quarterly reviews, basically. And the first one is a weekly review. And in a weekly review, basically, you're going through your wins, your losses, your fixes. Your fixes are things that you need to adjust on that particular week. So it's like if you set out that week to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is what you've achieved, then you take that. Those are the wins. The losses are the things you said you wanted to do and you didn't do it. So it's like, why didn't I do that? Was I lazy? Did things come in my way? Are there things that I did not foresee before? How can I do them differently? How can I improve? And that comes to the fixes. The lessons is about the things you've learned. Either you've learned them through personal development, through books, through learning, through mentors, or even through just the fact that you lost and you didn't do very well, and therefore you got some lessons from it. So that's what you do on a weekly basis. Something else you do in a week review is this thing we call a consistency tracker. Now, this is almost like the core of the whole program. Now, do you remember before I told you to narrow down your goals to 10 goals from the Wheel of Life? This is where they come, basically. These are the actions. Those goals have to be put down into actions, 10 actions that you need to be doing on a daily basis. Now, what you do is you plot them down on your program, and each day, say for instance, if your plan was to exercise 3 times a week, for instance, and so behavior number 1 would be exercising, and your plan is to do it 3 times a week. So if throughout that week you mark it 3 times on here, if you marked it 1, 2, 3, then at the end of the day, that is goal achieved, because you set yourself out to do it 3 times a week and you've managed to do it 3 times a week. You see what I mean? Same for anything else. If your plan was, say, I want to be waking up or going to bed, that's my target, to be going to bed no later than 10 o'clock every night. And every single day you mark yourself if you've achieved that. And at the end of the week, you can tell how successful you've been very vividly, and you can have numbers to tell you how successful you've been. You remember when I told you about success being a numbers game? This breaks it down for you and it makes it very easy. And I am a testament to that personally. I have seen that. I've seen how much this has transformed the way I approach my days, my weeks, my months, my quarters, because everything becomes very clear whether you've been successful that week or not. So weekly review, consistency tracker, really important. So again, in weekly planning, you have the banner goals, you have the top 3 goals for the month, you have the top 3 goals for the week, you have the most important events for the week, you have the personal development materials you want to study for that week, the skills and development and the things you want to do. So all these things come into your weekly plan, and you have to assess them on a weekly basis. And it all comes down in that program. You know, it seems like a lot of stuff to do, but once you've got them down, it's something that you can do in half an hour. You know, a week review, you can do it in half an hour because it's all something that you've laid out at the beginning of the year. Month in review, again, slightly different. This is where you're tallying the number of all the weekly review from the previous month. And it gives you an idea of how successful you've been that particular month in terms of you achieving your goals that you have. This is also the time where you go back to the grateful, to gratitude, looking at 3 things that you're so grateful for in that particular month, and also the 3 greatest lessons that you're trying to learn from that month. The final one is about quarterly review. Now, to do more in one area of your life requires you to do less in another. Quarterly review, it's all about assessing where you need to deploy more of the resources of your life, basically. Quarterly review is not about you cherry picking little things here, there, and ever. It's looking at things holistically and saying, hang on a second, I think this is the direction that my life needs to take more. This is where I need to focus on in the next quarter. So you're talking about things like redoing your life assessment score. You remember mine when I said it was very skewed? When I did it at the end of the first quarter, it kind of started bulging more cyclic, if you like. And by the end of the year, it was almost like a full circle, a proper wheel, because you start assessing that how things are changing. So each quarter you can replot your wheel of life. You remember that I was plotting for you? So you can keep doing that, and that will kind of show your progress and how things are changing. And you can even have those, and you can even do that and even print them and post them on your notice board in your bedroom or in your office. And that shows you how you're improving. And that gives you the impetus, the motivation to keep going. This is also the time to assess what you need to stop doing for the next quarter, and the things that you need to expand doing, things that are working and you really need to invest more of your time in doing. Something else you do need to do on a quarterly review is something I call the 3-2-1 plan. Now, 3-2-1 plan basically means 3 books you need to study, 2 audio programs you need to listen to, and 1 seminar you need to attend. Now, I want to tell you, if there is one thing that can really transform you, it's knowledge. They say knowledge is power, and that is very true. One of the things we don't quite do enough, and even myself, I'm doing it to the best of my ability, but I'm still not doing it enough, is learning. We need to keep learning. And one of the tragedies of life is that so many of us, we stop learning as soon as we leave full-time education. And so we leave everything to fate. Now, the 3-2-1 plan is all about learning. It's all about acquiring new knowledge, acquiring new insight, getting new motivation, getting new inspiration. So reading new books, and it's all about the books that will inspire you more to do the things that you do. So it's things in your field, things that will push you more forward, things that will inspire you more, audio programs, things that you listen to. Sometimes I wake up in the morning feeling so down. I just listen to Jim Rohn for 15 minutes, and that completely transforms my day. Why? Just 15 minutes. Imagine if I was doing that for half an hour every day. You know what I mean? So the quarterly review, the 3-2-1 plan, it's all about ensuring that you always have books that you're reading, you always have audio programs that you're listening to, you have seminars that you're planning to attend, or you have programs that you're following that can help you improve yourself. That's very important. And the last thing that we need to do with in a quarterly review is association evaluator. This is also when you associate, you start evaluating your association, the people that you need to limit association with, people that are not very positive with you, people that are not really adding value in your life. You know, this is where the excess baggage needs to go. and also expanding associations as well. In my quarterly review, there are people I've looked at and realized, like my mentors, for instance, the one that I was talking about earlier. I've looked at it and realized these are the people that have really added value in the past quarter. So I really need to to add more value to them and really invest more in them, because they are really investing more time and they are really making a difference to me. If you don't do that actively, you may end up throwing your life around here, there, and everywhere, but it's not really adding value to your life. This is by doing these evaluations, it helps you really making more impact in your life in the things that you do. So it doesn't really change what you do, but it just adds more impact to what you do, because you direct it where it matters the most, if that makes sense. So yeah, pretty much that's the whole thing. That's the whole program. And like what Steve said, I've just shared with you how the program works and the 8 steps of it. But if you wanted really to have the insight of how this program works, and you really wanted this program, obviously we are more than happy to share it with you. We are more than happy to coach you through it. We can share with you the program, just the program, and you can do it yourself. We can coach you through it. And yeah, and really make this year the best one yet for you, because personally for me, I'm planning to make 2021 the best year for me yet, and really make the most of every opportunity that it brings. And yeah, so all the best of luck for this year, and back to you, Steve.